What is going on, everybody? This is the Roundtable of Wraiths Gym, and you can see with me here is Ryan. And recently, we had a Road to Nationals event, our second Road to Nationals event in the Chicagoland area, hosted at a location. Well, the venue or the event itself was called the Sub Club because they run
Yeah,
the
it
guy who
was.
owns the game store runs events out of a subway that he also owns, which was pretty convenient and cool. And props to
It was
them. They
awesome.
hosted a great event. It was well done, and we really enjoyed ourselves there. Ryan, do you know the name of like the actual game store, or because
Baseline.
Baseline
Yeah.
in the northwestern suburbs of Chicago? So awesome job by them. Ryan played a chain deck at this event where he finished second overall, third after
Bridesmaid.
Swiss, and lost only to another great player in our area named Derek. So we wanted to highlight Ryan's chain deck, what led to his success, talk about some of the matchups, key cards, and differences that maybe he played compared to some other chain lists out there, and why he felt they were beneficial and important to his style of play. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, of your 8 equipment slots here, is there anything you want to highlight about what you use in specific matchups, or somebody who looks at your list and then says to themselves, "Great, here's 8 equipments. I don't really know what to play in against what." What would you have to say to that?
Yeah, I think it's a relatively standard loadout for chain decks. I know that I'm not breaking any ground with this. The only thing that might be of note would be the Reaping Blade. As far as chess pieces go, Husk is God. You play the Aether Ironweave for like really controlling matchups. My first round matchup actually played it in the mirror, so that's an interesting. I didn't test the mirror enough, and I liked just having the Husk there anyway. But I think the one key difference between my deck and maybe a lot of other decks would be the Reaping Blade, and that is strictly for Prism, and strictly there for auras and Aura Prism. And the reasoning behind that is with Nebula Blade, the 2 cost doesn't really allow you to do much, or you have to play some other cards and then still spend 2 resources to kill it on the last action. The Reaping Blade, you can simply, like, if they play a Genesis and you kind of want to save up for a big turn, you can pitch a blue, make a Rune Chant, and then attack with Reaping Blade or something like that. I mean, if you don't want to waste the Rune Chant. But just having that one resource to pop an aura is just more efficient than, I think, the 2 cost.
Yeah, that's a good
It
call.
allows you to also, play out your turn a little bit more efficiently, and then still have that one floating resource to uh, kill the aura at the end. It's just more affordable. So that would be the difference there. Reaping Blade is only for Prism.
All right, very cool. So kind of standard loadout, reaping blades for Prism. I like that addition. It sounds pretty awesome. As I'm scrolling through your deck list, which we will link on the bottom of the video or in the description of the video, are there any key cards or changes that you added recently that might not be in some chain decks you see out there, or maybe some things that are popular that worked really well? Are there any cards that you wanted to highlight that you felt played really strongly or made great additions to your deck?
Sure. Yeah, I think the three, again, this is a relatively standard loadout. I think the three glaring differences between my deck and maybe another chain deck would be the Flock of the Featherwalkers, the three dimensional crossroads, and then the three invert existences. I don't think a typical chain deck will run all three, or at least, the ones that I've been seeing online aren't running at least all three invert existences. The reasoning I ran all three was, one, I think it tremendously helps in the mirror. I think it's such a huge mirror card to just surprise them with some blood debt. I think the potential there is just incredible. You can kind of sneak at the end of their turn. You can kind of sneak it some extra blood debt that they're not expecting, and like if they're on that like 15 to 14 threshold, You can sneak in a couple of Blood Debt. They go below 13, and then on the start of their next turn, they kill Husk, which is kind of sneaky. It's something that they might not be waiting for, or it makes them play a Husk now inefficiently on your turn. It wins games against Chane. If they're below, if they're at 2 or below, then you can sneak out an invert existence. That's actually how I won my top 4 matchup against Mark. Was with an invert existence. So I liked running all 3. The other reason I went from 2 to 3 is because I knew there was going to be a lot of Azalea there, which is a crazy thing that just came out of my mouth. But invert is just tremendously good against Azalea. It counters the Memorial Ground play that I've been burned with several times before, because you can respond to an instant with an instant of your own. I didn't face any Azalea, but the thought process is, if you banish invert early, or if you've banished invert after they've played Red in the Ledger specifically, you can keep invert in your banish zone and just wait for that Memorial Ground play to banish it and get it out of there before they can put it on the top of their deck and stack their deck. So that's the reason I ran 3. I liked running 3. Making changes, if I were to play this deck again, I probably would not go down from 3. I just thought that, in the matchups that I wanted to see this card, I loved it. Dimensional Crossroads, I only played it once because, control decks weren't really featured at this tournament a lot. And I only played it against Dash once. I kept 3 in. I know a lot of people, in the control matchups, you don't need it. They just like, hey, just burst down their defense and just win anyway. And I just hadn't had a lot of experience playing into heavy turtle controls with this deck. So I just had it there as a security blanket just to add more. I put in a lot of work in that Dash matchup. I think I got 2 out at one point and was doing like 4 Arcane a turn, which really added up. That game ended up not being very close. But yeah, I liked the 3. I would probably potentially test running things instead of those. But I liked them just because of going in with kind of not a ton of experience. And then the Phlox, I know that's kind of the hot addition because Matt Rogers ran it, so a lot of other people are running it as well. If I were to play this tournament again, I would probably go down to 2 of each color. I liked the Phlox when I needed them, but a lot of times they are very awkward. I think 6 in the deck might be a little bit too much, at least for my taste. Again, it did help me win against Garlitz in the top 4 match. I was able to have a pretty huge turn with one of the Phlox that just kind of swung momentum from me. But some of the other matchups, it was just really awkward that I couldn't get it off in a way that I wanted to play it. So I would probably keep the Phlox in some capacity, but I would go down to, I think, 2 and 2. And then other than that, it's just kind of standard. There's not really much difference between my deck and other decks that you might search online.
All right, well, cool. I know the invert was something you really enjoyed having and came up clutch. And then, I think the Phlox is interesting. I think, like you said, sometimes can be a little clunky, but probably still deserves a spot, just for the versatility it provides.
Yeah, and so this also came up, something to note. Sam was telling us in his first round match, Flock, there is that additional cost you do have to show. So, some people might think that Flock is an optional show in order to make the Quicken token, and that's not true. So, in order to play Flock, you have to have another card in your hand that costs 1 or less. So, you're always making the Quicken token. It's not an option. So, don't save it for your last action and think you're going to play this 1 for 5 and just not make the Quicken token. You have to show it in order to play. So that's why it gets clunky, because you always have to have an additional card.
Good point. And speaking of Sam and the rest of our team, let's talk about some of your matchups that you played against. We'll start from the beginning. We'll try to be a little bit quicker than our last video where where long-winded Levi really dove into everything. But I'm glad he did because Azalea, had never, reached those heights before. But your first matchup was a Chane mirror in round 1. Do you want to speak on that matchup at all?
Yeah, I actually lost this match, so that was cool. I was 0-1. I called Jess, my wife, for those obviously you don't know. And I was texting her at about what 1:30, and I was like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll be home soon. If I lose one more, I'm dropping from this tournament. I'll grab a beer and I'm going to drop from the tournament." Little did I know I'd win out and then eventually get home at like 9:30. So I had a nice conversation with her at night, but it was just a weird, like an awkward game. Like I got there, he he had like his first or his, he went first, so he was able to shackle right away. And then turn two, he art of war. Turn three, he art of war. Turn four, he had double puppetry. It was art of war turn, double puppetry. And my third banish was art of war, puppetry, art of war. So if you played Chane, if you know the Chane matchup, that's not good. And so there was really, I mean, I think I got him down to like I don't know 11 health, and it was over. So it was a pretty good draw for him, pretty really terrible draw for me, and he played his cards pretty well, and then yeah, it wasn't much of a game. So I thought it was going to be an early exit for me. I was like, oh okay, I'll just get to go to the bar quick and grab something to eat, and then I'll be home by 3. So
Little did you know.
little did I know that I was gonna
Never lose hope.
go on a streak. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the chain mirror in round one. So then after that, when half the field has wins, half the field has losses at that point. What did you go up against in your round two matchup?
I got to go on the very last table in the tournament. I was on table 17. It was nice and roomy down there. It was nice, but I actually played the dad of the kid that kicked my ass round one, and he was on dash control. And yeah, like I drew a lot better. I played a lot better that game, that one wasn't much of a game. Had 2 crossroads out at one point, and just my banishes were hitting, my hands were stacking up, so it wasn't much of a game. He played as well as he could. I had just crazy hands and crazy draws as Chane can do, and yeah, it was over relatively quickly. So I was able to even up there. That was a nice kind of like get going, get the momentum thing for me. So that felt pretty good. So yeah, that was against Control Pistol Dash.
So you kept it in the family. You played against the Sun round one.
Son kicked my ass, and then I kind of returned the favor to Dad. But both really awesome people, like great guys. Like they were very personable. It was didn't feel bad to lose. It also didn't feel like I was like, oh sorry man, I won. Like it was just super personal. It was awesome
Sure.
conversation.
All right, and then round three. So now you're 1-1 at this point. So the dream is still alive, and you go up against a Katsu. Was it an aggro Katsu, control Katsu, mid range Katsu, and how'd that matchup go for you?
It was, I would say it was aggro Katsu for sure, or at least mid range. It wasn't like drunken gorilla Sam level of aggro where he just attacks all the time, but it was a more mid rangey to leaning aggro, and it was an interesting game. It was a grind for a little bit. I banished a few Art of Wars. I don't even know if I got an Art of War off. I can't remember that game, but I remember there was a key point where I was able to string together a bunch of attacks. I did a lot of damage. He was face tanking a lot of stuff. And he then, like I want to say he took like 17 damage to the face.
Oh,
and
wow.
he had a full hand, right? And then he led with Soul Bead Strike, like a red Soul Bead Strike. And I've played Katsu, but I've also played against Katsu enough to know that like he clearly has full combo there, or at least he's like representing full combo or razor, probably both. Like he's for sure got a razor, right? He wants me to block for 4. He's gonna come over the top, then he's gonna go into full combo and probably get fine center off, which would shut me down. And so I overblocked. I blocked for like 7. And he like sat back. He was like, I did not. I think I made a block for 8. He was like, wow, 8. Okay, didn't anticipate that. So like he face tanked all that damage, and I overblocked, and he didn't do anything back to me. So like at that point, momentum was back in mine. I think he was up like maybe 9 health before that, and then I was up, and so then it became kind of like a little war of attrition. He had a pretty good like turn after that, but at that point I had gotten him down enough. And my last turn, I think I was at 3 health left or 4 health left, and he was at 3 health left, and his equipment was all spent, and I had like a Vexing Malice in my hand, and I had a couple blues, so I was like making rune chants, playing seeds, and I killed him with a Vexing. So I just kind of arcaned him to death at that point. So it was a good game back and forth. Um, yeah, that one turn definitely swung the momentum where he just kind of thought I was gonna underestimate the soul bead, and I kind of saw through the line there, which helped me out.
was gonna say I think that is an important talking point, and perhaps you know no fault to the players, but
Sure.
identifying as you the player playing against Katsu is identifying their paths to victory and knowing what they want to do on their turn, and so kind of like you said, if they take the damage. And then start with a card like that only grants go again on hit. Um, you can assume there's more to follow or reasons for why they led with that card. So yeah, I think that comes with experience and play. So good on you, and sounds like that was a good game, and that was actually a major turning point. And I think moments like that come from experience and testing. So
For sure, yeah, and
credit
like,
to you, man.
yeah, thanks. And it's just I think in terms of like lines, right? Like Katsu's one of those. He's a bitch, and you have to like learn what they're trying to do. And I'm not saying I'm an expert. I cherish playing against you. I cherish playing against like Sam when he plays because he explains kind of his mindset, and you've done that too. Soul Beat is just one that it is devastating when it hits because like as when I got to we'll talk about the finals game, but Fine Center was the reason that I lost that game, or one of the reasons that I lost that game because Derek got it off. That line is just predictable. So if you're leading with a full grip with Soul Bead, kind of take the time to digest what's your opponent telling you. If they have one card and they're playing Soul Bead, okay, like you can take that, right? They're not going to really be able to do much. But if they have a full grip, they're saying, I've got a razor, so even if you block this, I'm going to be able to give it go again because I'm going to go over the top of it. I probably have a crane dance, or I have a second piece of. I have either the second piece, the third piece, or I have both pieces of the puzzle, and I'm going to search for the last one. So he was going full line there had I not overblocked. So yeah, against Katsu, just try to decipher what they're doing. A lot of times it's really, really, really hard, but yeah, just try your best, make your best educated guess, and that was mine. And I think I was in that instance I was spot on, and that led to my win.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then 2-1 went from a disastrous start to a
It's like,
salvageable
hey,
day.
yeah.
Round 4, what did you play against?
Played against Prism. Great dude. I forgot his name, but it was probably like just the most personable back and forth game. It was so fun. Like he was just a really great dude. And he was playing like Aura Control Prism. So that's where I brought in the Reaping Blade. And we were just brought in the Time Snap potions too. And I was able to have a every time he put down Genesis, every time he put down like a Merciful, I just was immediately like, okay, kill that thing. Like, didn't even hesitate, just wasn't trying to like do things where, okay, maybe I'll let it sit there for a turn. I immediately killed every aura that he put down. Um, he didn't get any Sentinels off on me because he was grabbing them at weird times. So yeah, there was a couple times that he was swinging at me. In the Prism matchup, the only aura or the only herald that I really really care about is Erudition. So I save Erudition, or I save the Husk specifically for Erudition. I try to cover Judgment because that can kind of screw over Chane, but I don't think I popped one Herald at any point in the game. It was just like, if he was throwing a Triumph at me and I didn't even run Ninth Blades, they're not even in my list. So if he was throwing Triumph at me, I was just kind of taking it. It was like, okay, I'm just going to see what happens here. And then eventually I just kind of won the race. I was able to put out more damage. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
there was one point where I think he had like 5 spectral shields, or he had 4 spectral shields, and then one of the spectral shields was glisten, so he had a little bit like I think it was like a 5 attack, and I was able to like howl from beyond, ghostly visit for like I don't even know what was that 10 damage off
Mm-hmm.
of the one, and so I was able to wipe his board, and that kind of reset him a little bit. But yeah, that game I had some pretty fortunate draws, and I really wasn't at threat of losing at all. I wasn't. I didn't feel as if I was on my back foot in that game at all.
It
But
kind of
yeah, just
feels
kill the
like,
pop the auras. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like at least from what we've, at least for us, we've noticed that it's not so much about popping Phantasm because at the end of the day, if they smack you, you can pretty much still outrace them, like you said, as long as you stop them from gaining a lot of auras and or going off with erudition. You're still probably going to win that damage race.
Yeah, the auras are what's going to get you in that matchup. Chain's going to outrace Prism, I think, pretty much any day. As long as if you have Husk and you can save it for erudition specifically, you're going to be fine. Just make sure those auras don't get out of control. So take care of them when they come out.
Okay, so then that leads us to round five, and are you ready for this? Round five, which means both players, had a pretty good record at this. There were two at our tournament that did well. You played against Lavia.
I did, yes. He ended up making the top eight. He was, I think at that point he had a tie, so he was a little bit below me in the standings. But this was like a weird one where I was like playing all of a sudden at like table like 10, and then this game was at table 2, and we were like, wait, what's happening? This is insane. But yeah, I played Lavia. He was playing the Meat Axe against me, and this was a fantastic game. It was crazy. It was just back and forth. He was going all gas, no brakes. Like I think that's how Lavia has to play, especially against Chane. And he was just consistently coming at me with pressure. I broke my husk early off of defending a command and conquer. I was trying not to lose an art of war, and I think I was at like 30 health. So it was like a really early turn that I busted that. I was able to do a considerable amount of damage back after I busted it, but yeah, it was crazy. There were a couple key points. Actually, the one key point, I would say I just was on the right side of variance. He had a Dread Screamer, and the follow-up attack was a red Dread Screamer. The follow-up attack would have been an Endless Maw, and both were pretty guaranteed to hit, but he whiffed on a Dread Screamer. So it was only coming at me for 6. Did not have go again. He didn't like roll the pants or anything like that. So that shut him down, and then after that, I just kind of was able to get back at him, and then it ended as many Lavia games do, where he had to block me out, and then he died to the blood debt.
The classic whiff, whiff on a desperate time where you need it, and then the classic die to blood debt.
Die to your own mechanic. But yeah, so that was a great game. I think I had like 3 health, 2 health left, so it was insane. I was like very nervous about being in reckless swing range at that point. But yeah, it was a great game, and John he's a great player, pilots it extremely well, so that was extremely fun. So shout out to him.
All right, and then round 6, the final round of Swiss, you got matched up against someone that we would probably say is like a team member at this point, even though he hasn't been in any of our videos yet. But you got matched up against Sam and his Katsu. So walk us through that game.
Yeah, I mean, Sam and I played back and forth. We just play all the time. And at the last Road to Nationals, I was on Dash. We got matched up round 1, and he just nut rolled me and just beat the shit out of me. Even though I think we had tested like 6 times going up into that match, and I was like 6-0 against him. And then of course we match up round 1, and he just beats the shit out of me. And so yeah, we matched up against each other. We kind of figured that we were both in the top 8, regardless of win loss. So it was kind of a little bit of a relax, but there's that tension because like we didn't know where we stood because there were a bunch of draws. And it was just a game where I got everything. I know I played at least 2 Art of Wars. I might have played 3. I played all 3 Shadow Puppetries. Like I was just on absolute fire with my banishes. There was like a weird point where like my hand, like he had passed, and so I just grabbed the top 4 cards of my deck. I had 4 banishes, so I grabbed the top 4 cards of my deck. I banished them, and they were all non-blood debt. And then I realized that I hadn't drawn yet for the turn because it was like a weird like interaction. So I was like, I think this is supposed to be my hand. Explain. He was like, just grab it. That's where it's supposed to be. So I grabbed my hand. The next was like Bounding Demagon, Seeds, like Riftbind, Bounding Demagon. So it was like four, like just like fire cards. I was going to be able to play all four of them out of banish. Like it was just like a crazy situation where no matter what he would have done, I was going to win that game. So it it was just a kind of one of those chain high variance games where you just hit everything and your opponent doesn't matter. You're just playing solitaire.
Yeah, there gets to be sometimes, like you said, if the things go right, it almost doesn't matter.
That's what it was. He
Yeah.
scooped. He was just like, there's nothing that I can do out of this. Like I think I was playing an Art of War +1 for the turn, and I followed up with a Shadow Puppetry, and he was like, I'm not getting out of this. Like, good game. But I mean, we both made top 8 anyway, so that was it worked out well that we both had made it. But yeah, it was just one of those games. Like nothing he could have done differently.
And so, to continue down the Sam storyline, after your round 6 matchup, so you lose the first one, you win out, you go 5-1 going into the top 8. You actually get paired up against Sam again,
He was the
and
7 seed, yeah,
so
or 6 seed.
I had left at this point. I played Azalea on the Levi list. I actually did decent. I finished 4-2, but
Got 11,
I did get 11th, but
just outside. Yeah,
not good. Side note to toot my own horn. My only 2 losses were against Prism, and I faced her round 1 and round 2.
Yeah,
Like
fucking
it's just
ridiculous. Wow.
it's just like miserable luck.
What a
I
ridiculous draw.
I beat everything else that day. So that didn't feel good. But anyways, so you get matched up with Sam, and I wasn't there, so I don't really know what went down. But explain the situation.
It was like so Sam and I were talking and he like made the comment he's like, are you going to be able to go to nationals? And I said, if I have a seat, I will be going to nationals. Like unless it gets canceled, that's like I'm absolutely going to nationals. Mark had already had it and Mark he wasn't going to go by himself. Now Garlitz and I have been talking about going to Nats. So I was like, yeah, I absolutely would go. So he sat there and he was like, I'm not going to be able to go. The seat means a lot to you. You're going to be able to go, you know, if I scooped. And so that conversation kind of went down. I never was like, hey, man, I hope you do it. Scoop to me, because obviously I'd probably get banned from LSS or however they do it. But it was his decision. We talked about kind of just, making a kind of a deal. And so as soon as the round started, he called the judge and said, all right, I'm scooping. And so he gave me the win in the top 8 to go to the top 4 and get my invite to nationals. So I've messaged him. We've made a deal. There will be I will uphold my end of the deal there. But yeah, so he scooped knowing that he wasn't going to be able to go, that the seat would be wasted on him, and in turn he allowed me the opportunity to become the United States champion. But yeah, it was something that I really appreciate, and it's something that definitely is not. It's a gesture that's definitely not lost on me. I've explained to him and I've talked to him many times about that.
Very cool. Okay, so then that means you move to the top 4, and
Yes.
again you play a team member in Mark, and so you and Mark were duking it out. Both of you have your invite at this point, so now you're trying to play for some higher stakes, the big prizes towards the end.
Sure.
And it's a mirror match because Mark is notoriously a Chane player as well. You spoke on it earlier that invert was the difference. So was it a close grind? What was the flow of the game?
Yeah, it was a great game. So it was actually at that point that this is why the Sam game is going to get null and void here, Sam. If you're watching this long here, in round of 8 we rolled to see who went first, and then all of a sudden top 4. So Sam beat me, and then he was like, okay, like we played like a mini game on the side. But then then it was like, okay, hey, top seed actually gets to pick if they want to go first. So Mark and I guess clearly have a different point of view from other people that play Chane, because I guess in the mirror, people that play Chane like to go second. Garlitz and I in our testing and mirrors like to go first because we like to kind of get the shackle rolling. So Mark went first, and we kind of kept going pressure. Like both of us were having like pretty solid turns. No one really had like awkward banishes. Mark actually had one down the line where I think it was 4 shackles, and he whiffed on all 4 after he had kind of blocked me out. So that kind of helped me get a little bit of momentum. But Flock, this was the one time that I was like, this is the best card in the deck at this point because I was able to uh, play red Flock, create the Quicken token, Snapdragon, giving that go again, and then that led to kind of like just an insane snowball, and then that got Mark to a low enough health pool where I was able to put some pressure on him, and then invert existence to banish like a plunder run and like an enlightened strike or a command and conquer or whatever it might have been, but so that was two arcane there, and then he had one health remaining, and he had no cards in hand because he had to block me out, and like flipped over just cards that he couldn't play. So he died to blood debt. But after that flock turn, it was pretty solidly in my camp, I would say. And yeah, it was a great game. It was a good game. Mark he's like a top four machine at this point. This is his second top four, so props to him for just being a savage. But yeah, it was a fun game. It was nice and relaxed because like I had the invite at that point, so like both of us were like, okay, like we were both at the same point. His wife had called him at that point, was like, hey, are you coming home? My wife was texting me like, are you serious right now? So both of us were like, hey, I kind of hope we both lose at this point. Like, good luck, but hey, it wouldn't be the worst thing if we lose here. And like, so it was a fun game, and it was nice and relaxing because there was no pressure there.
Yeah, so congrats to you and Mark on making it that far, first of all, and then a hard fought game by Mark. So awesome to have both of you guys there representing the squad in the top
Yeah.
four. And then with you moving on to the finals, you played a very good player in our area, Derek. And Derek was running a Katsu. And why don't you go ahead and walk us through the finals match? Maybe talk about how or when you thought the turning point was, which led to his victory, and
Sure.
then we'll wrap it up from there.
Sure, yeah. So Derek he's a really good player. He won the last two road to nats in Chicago, and I think he said his record was 18-0. Like he hasn't dropped a match or a game in 18 road to nationals wins here or matches here. So he's on kind of a hot streak, and he's playing extremely well with his Katsu deck. So props to him. It was a weird game. Like neither one of us, like I think he had a natural combo line once, but it wasn't like either one of us were getting any of our big things out. Like I was banishing Artivores. Like my banishes were like terrible that game. So I was playing I thought I was playing pretty well for what I had. There was two big kind of things that like really screwed me over, and it was kind of in the same chain. So the turn before he played a surging line, and I can't remember at this point if it was like natural into whelming, but he was playing the surging line, and I chose not to use Husk to block it. I was blocking with cards from my hand, and then I was at I don't remember how much health I was at. I think I was at like 15, and then like, the next turn he played Crane Dance, used Snapdragon Scalers, and then played Fine Center, and I couldn't block with Husk, and I didn't have Soul Reaping in hand, so I couldn't block for anything in my hand, so I went to 13. So not only did Fine Center go off, so he was able to create a Zen State token, but I wasted my Husk. So my
Oh
Husk
gosh, that
it
probably
was
felt so shitty. Yeah.
it was so shitty. So my Husk popped. I didn't get to play at that game. It's now sitting in my banish, and he's got the Zen State token, and the Zen State token. So I had to play seeds out of my like. I was just trying to like scramble to do as much pressure to him as possible. So I was like playing a seeds out of my banish in order to just get Nebula Blade to like 4 at some point. And the seeds I knew was just going to get wasted because Zen State blocks everything. And so it was just like a really feel bad couple of turns because that thing was just doing so work. I want to say it probably blocked like, I don't know, 8 to 10 arcane damage, and the game ended with him on 2 health. So it was like just a perfect combo for him to get off, for him to pull it off. And it just, Zen State and me wasting the Husk just absolutely kind of sealed it for me. So it was a great game. We both were kind of just working with what we had. Neither one of us really were going off or hit any of our big draws, but in the end of the day, he was able to get past it with his Zen State token, and then just kind of doing what Katsu does with the Kadachis and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a fantastic finals. I was not disappointed with the way. I was kind of pissed that I didn't use the husk, but at that point, what are you going to do?
Well, like you said, you lost to a great player, so there's no shame in that. And you
Sure.
yourself, have been having a very good road to Nats season as well. So no shame in losing to a good player, especially someone of his caliber. So I want to just reiterate before we wrap this up. Thank you to all of our team members, from Levi to Sam to Mark to Chris and Bob and you and we've been playing lots of games against each other, and we bounce ideas off one another. And my biggest advice, if you're have a local scene and you're trying to play competitively, find a group of guys that you can test with and bounce ideas off of, because just that practice and that connection goes really far as doing well in these tournaments. So can't be a coincidence that you and Mark and Sam, we're all up there towards the end. Hard work pays off, and so thanks to them on the team. Thanks to hometown TCG's Josh when we were at the event. He was super friendly to us. Go like and subscribe their channel. They have great content. They're also from the Chicagoland area, and we talked about connecting with him to do maybe like some type of event between the two of our channels. So shout out to them, and then again shout out to the Sub Club guy who ran the event at the Subway, because for running some event at a Subway, I didn't know what to expect, and it went way smoother than I had anticipated.
Yeah, they were raffling off free sandwiches. They
Yeah,
were raffling off boxes and cases of stuff. I mean, it was a great event. Like
yeah,
it was awesome.
yeah. Anything you want to say before we sign off?
Yeah, just to go kind of a step further, just like all the testing, the team and the work that we've been putting in with playing all these games and stuff like that. It's been awesome. I know Garlitz and I and the people that have invites, even going 11th place, right? Like we wouldn't be that successful if we didn't have each other to bounce ideas off of. So it's been awesome to test with you and everybody, and this is. It's a fun game, and I'm glad that we have a group of people that are committed enough to continue playing and bounce ideas off of each other and make each other better. And hopefully next season, when COVID's finally dead, everybody can get their invite and we can all go down and make nationals like a big gigantic party.
Yeah, that's the dream right there.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
thank you. That is well said. Hopefully, just a little channel update before we sign off. Ryan and myself are both school teachers, and so if we have been kind of stalling on posting videos, with us testing for Road to Nationals and not wanting to reveal our secrets, and then also with the school year starting up, we've slowed down, but we will be continuing to work hard to get some more content out for you guys. We pride ourselves on making quality content instead of a large quantity. So we will do our best to get you guys some gameplay soon. And as always, feel free to reach out in the comments if you have any suggestions or you just want to chit chat with us. So for Ryan and myself, this has been the Roundtable of Wraith, signing off. Have a good one.